Welcome to Joy in the Morning with Corey Walker and Karen Klaus. This is a time to talk about grief, loss, love, and pain, and finding hope on the other side. Hi, I'm Karen Klaus. The podcast is Joy in the Morning. The website is joywillcomeinthemorning.com. A question for you today. Have you ever found yourself just going strong into a project, thinking that you're invincible, only to find out that maybe your idea wasn't that great, whether it be a diet that you started or an exercise program? There's always choices. You, one, give up, or two, think that you can do it and you're the one in control and that can make anything happen. But sometimes we forget that there's somebody to help us, right? God didn't want people that gave up easily, but he also didn't want people to forget that he's part of the plan. And I think Corey is going to talk a little bit about how we can get to the other side of some of these tough plans we make for ourselves.
Hi, I'm Corey. Thanks a lot for coming back to listen to Joy in the Morning. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. We got a really good topic today. It's something that's really close to my heart because it's something that I feel like I continue to do over and over in my life, but God is really working with me on this. God wants people to be people that don't give up easily. He wants us to be people who have great endurance. And one of the things I think that happens to me personally, because I kind of have this very romantic way of thinking about things. In the beginning, whether it's a relationship or, pretty much anything, any kind of thing that I feel like I'm going to do, especially for God, I'm saying, yes, Lord, count me in. Here am I, send me. And I go all full force into it. But then halfway through it, I'm like, oh, that's not really the way I thought it was going to be. I don't want to do this anymore. And I want to turn around and run backwards. And I think that happens to a lot of people. One of the reasons why I love sport karate, and I taught sport karate for a long time. One of the things that I like the most about it is that it teaches the participant to have more endurance. It teaches you, actually all sports do that. Sports are great for teaching your kids endurance because when there's something that's fun that makes the child go and push themselves to the other side, it actually works really well to teach them that, hey, even though it got a little bit hard there for a while, but I actually finished it. And now look how good I feel about myself. And this is something I feel like God has just been pushing me and bringing me through situations in my life where he continues to bring me through things that are a little harder and a little harder. And each time, if I see myself getting further and further through it, it really helps to build my faith and to understand that God was there for me the whole time. There was a situation that happened one time when I was on vacation. My husband and I had decided to climb up this mountain, and we had no preparation whatsoever for it. We saw it from a distance. We had rented these mopeds, and we looked out and saw these people look like ants walking up this mountain. And we could not believe that was people because it looked so steep from the place that we were at. We thought, how are they not falling off? So we got a little closer and a little closer. And then once we got over there, we realized anybody can just climb up this thing. We had no hiking shoes. We had one bottle of water. And we were just not prepared at all. We had no idea how high the elevation was. There was an old railroad track it was in Hawaii, and it was an old railroad track. If anybody knows this terrain, if you're like an avid hiker, some people go around all over the place looking for really great hikes, and this is one of those. The view from the top is unbelievable. But when you start out, it almost appears flat. It's an old abandoned railroad track. So when you walk, you actually have to walk up the slats of the wooden old railroad. Kind of rickety. There's a place for about 1,000 feet that I think it's like an 80-foot drop underneath. I had no idea. I'm terrified of heights. If I had any idea that there was nothing underneath there, I don't think I would have even attempted it. But it was hilarious. We found that stuff out later. I did end up getting through it. We just started walking, and we walked and we walked. We walked, and my husband was actually he's pretty fit. So he was going up ahead of me and he just decided that I was being too slow. I said, I'm going to make it, but I'm just not going to make it as fast as you. You go ahead and go up. So it turns out walking up this mountain, I'm alone. I'm completely by myself. Occasionally you would see some people struggling, and even the most fit people I saw struggling climbing up this thing. It was a steep climb. It's super hot. There's no shade anywhere. There's no trees. There's nothing but shrubs around you in this one little trail. And you're going up. As you get up there, the elevation kind of starts to make your heart pitter patter. And I got about halfway to the top, maybe a little more than halfway. But you're looking up and the mountain's so steep that it's starting to come outward. So you really can't even see the top. It looks like the stairway to heaven. It's just crazy looking from the bottom. But as you look up and you see how much more you have to climb and how steep the climb looks, I'm again afraid of heights. I really started to get afraid and I started thinking, I just can't go up any further. But then whenever I looked down, ooh, whoa, that was almost even worse. The slats that you're climbing on are so wide that you almost feel like you have to jump from one to the next, especially with my short little legs. I'm pretty short. So I kind of got to this place where I got stuck on the side of this mountain. I really couldn't go down. I was afraid to go down, but I really couldn't go up either because I was afraid to go up. And as I sat on the edge of this mountain, I finally turned around and I sit down and I just look around and all you can see is just ocean and Hawaii. As far as you can see, it's gorgeous up there. The wind is blowing really hard, but it was so scary. I thought it was going to fall off. I thought the wind was just going to just take me off of this mountain. And I was so terrified that I don't know if it was a combination of the elevation and my fear and everything. I was burnt to a crisp. I had no sunscreen on that day. I didn't know that we were going to do this climbing and I was just so sunburned. The top of my head was burning so much that the only little water bottle that I had, I kept putting little drops of water on top of my head just to cool it off a little bit because it was so burning up there and it felt awful. So as I'm sitting down, I turn myself around, I find a way to sit down and I'm sitting there on the edge of this mountain and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Nobody's going to find me up here for the longest time. I start having these just ideas like I'm going to die up here. I'm looking up. I see the vultures circling around and I'm thinking I'm done for. And the only thing that I could do was pray. And I start to ask God and I'm thinking, I don't even know how is he supposed to send me any help up here anyway? This is kind of silly to pray, but I was like, Lord, please do something. Please help my husband find me. I don't know what to do. I can't get down and I can't get up. And after a while, I'm not really sure exactly how long it was, but after a little while of me sitting up there just praying and crying, this guy that is a very avid climber, he's used to live in Hawaii. He said he's in Nevada now, but he's gone all over the world and hiked and climbed up mountains. He comes up all fit. He's got a whole backpack full of supplies. He comes up and he gives me electrolytes. I'm drinking electrolytes. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Where did this guy come from? And so he comes up and I'm thinking, cool, I can get down now. I was done. I was so over. When I first started, obviously, I was just looking up at the top thinking, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can get to the top of this thing and I'm going to tell everybody that I did it. At that point, I had lost all hope of trying to get to the top and all I wanted to do was go down. But instead of trying to get me to go down, he was trying to get me to go up. And he didn't actually do any work for me. I mean, obviously my body did all the work, but what he did for me was something that I couldn't do for myself at the time. He just became that voice in my head that said, come on, you can do it. So he said, look, we're going to walk 10 stairs up together and then we're going to rest. And I said, okay, I'll go 10. So I just closed my eyes, don't look up, don't look down, just go 10 steps. And we did it. He said, look, there's markers on each one of these. And I think there was 800 or something steps to the top. And we were on like 745. So we were really close. And he's like, you have no idea. And I think the reason why he stopped to help me was because he saw me. I started at one point to kind of step back down to see if it was possible for me to take a step down without rolling off. And when he saw me making that decision to go back down, he was like, no, don't do it. Let me help you get up because look how far you've come. Don't give up now. So as we do this together and He never pulled me by the hand. He never tried to push me or physically take me up at all. I did all of the work myself, but he helped me mentally. He helped me to realize that I was not stuck. I didn't have to be that afraid, and I could go the rest of the way. We finally made it to the top. And on the way up, I found my husband sitting there panicking on the side too. We picked him up along the way. It was a great story. We laughed so hard. My husband was actually admitted to me later how afraid he was too. When you get to the top of that thing, it's pretty steep, and anybody would be, it was a challenge. It was a challenge to say the least. When we got up to the top, we ran around up there a little bit. We took some pictures and saw everything. This guy shares his water and his electrolytes with us. And then my husband and I, hand in hand, go back down, and we help each other all the way down. It's a steep climb. Even the down was really hard. We talked about it. It's something in my life that I'll never forget. And it's something that really taught me a huge lesson. And first of all, I realized that no matter where you are, even if I felt like I was completely alone, I'm on the side of a mountain where like nobody, there's nothing up there but birds. How was there any way that God was going to send help up there? But he did. He sent me a guy, and he sent me just the right guy at just the right time with just the right stuff to help me not get down, but get up. So it got me to thinking, I love this story it's Ezekiel 47, and he's talking about the temple. Ezekiel's being shown some really cool things here, but listen to what he says. He says, this man that's showing him around, I think this guy's an angel, and he's trying to explain some things to Ezekiel here. And he says, as the man went eastward I have hair on me. As the man went eastward with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits. And then he took me through water that was ankle deep. Then he measured off another 1,000, and he led me through the water that was knee deep. Then he led me through water that was up to the waist. He measured off another 1,000, but now it was a river that I could not cross because the water had risen and it was deep enough to swim in a river that no one could cross. He asked me this, son of man, do you see this? And when I read this, it really spoke to me. I felt like God was telling me that this is kind of an analogy of like our walk with God. Whenever we're going through this life and we have God with us, it's like he starts to take you through things that you can kind of wade through yourself. It's just ankle deep. There's things that we go through that we build a little bit of faith. We trust God a little bit. For the most part, it wasn't out of the ordinary. We got through it. Eventually, the water just rises higher and higher. And, at the beginning of this year, I asked God what was coming. And I felt like he kind of spoke to my heart and said that he wanted me to go into really deep waters with him. And this was something that really spoke to me and brought me back to that first of the year idea that God was telling me, come out here into the deep waters. He said, in the beginning, when God created the earth, he said, the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the face of the deep. I love that. It means that out in the deep waters, that's where God's Spirit is. That's where he stays, over the deep stuff. And he said, come out here with me because the catch is greater out here, even though it's dangerous and you can't swim out here and you really need me. This is the place where the catch is so much greater. It just started making me think about the Jordan. Whenever in the book of Joshua, the Israelites, they crossed over the Jordan. And, last week in my Bible study, we studied Joshua chapter 7, and there's a line in there that stood out to me. It says that when Joshua comes to God in this place where they're just getting overrun with bad things happening, he starts crying out. He says, if only we would have been content to just stay on the other side. And I thought, wow, that's pretty typical of our normal response. Like, I should have just never even tried to do this. There's something that I'm going through right now that God, I know he asked me to do. I'm in the middle of it. And lately I've been begging him to let me stop. And I don't want to do it anymore. I want him to take it away from me. I really thought it was going to be different in the beginning than it has been. But I realize more and more that instead of quitting, God wants me to just push through. He wants me to not back up and go down, but to go forward and to just move through it. What's crazy about that is sometimes we don't know how long getting to the other side is going to take that's one of the hardest parts, is that we just don't know how long that's going to take. When I lost my son, I for the first year or so, you can't help the way you grieve, because grief can come over you. And people had told me this before, but I didn't really understand it, that grief comes in waves. And I think that's just God's grace to us, that it hits you hard, but then it releases a little, but then it comes back, and it's almost like a wave that just keeps hitting you. It washes over you, and then it leaves you for a little while, until any opportune time it just comes back. And there were times where I would just be driving down the street and I would get hit with this deep grief, and I would just have to pull over and cry. There were times where I could be in the middle of a haircut, I'd have to stop and run to the bathroom and cry. And those things, I think, are really normal when you're in the beginning of going through something very, very deep that you can't handle yourself. Sometimes this happens when we lose somebody. You could even lose somebody in a divorce and feel like you're going through this time of just deep, deep sorrow that you don't know that you can really live without them. Sometimes you want a divorce and you feel like you can't live with them, or not even just a divorce. Maybe you're living with a kid who's being bad. Maybe whatever our situations are, sometimes we have places in life that we get to that we just think, if nothing changes, I'm going to die here. I got to get out of this. I can't do it. There's a place where we just decide that we can't do this anymore and we want to run away. And I feel like instead of doing that, what God keeps showing me in my life is, instead of going and turning backwards, I need you to push through it, because there's a promised land on the other side. Just like the Israelites, when Joshua finally realized that God was trying to get him over there, but it was going to take a lot more than just wading through the water. This was going to be a little bit different. These guys had to swim. You had to go through this almost baptism point where you're going to get dunked and you're going to be completely under there, where the only thing that you can do is hold on to God. Just like me on the side of my mountain, I'm stuck. I have no way of really doing this for myself. I needed something to help get me through. God wants to do that. He said, when you pass through, this is from the book of Isaiah. He says, when you pass through the deep waters, they will not overtake you. And when you pass through the fire, you will not be burned. They will not scourge you. So God says, I'll be with you and I'll walk with you through the waters, through the deep, deep water, through the fire, through the things that are really pressing in on your life. I want to be there with you. I want to be like this guy that's over here saying, here, let's take it 10 steps at a time. We're going to do it together. Come on. And then you get with him and you decide, look, I'm not alone in this. I can do this. And before you know it, you've passed over, you've crossed over that side, you've made it to the top of that mountain, and you're standing on the top and you're seeing all the awesome benefits that you get to being on the other side. This channel, in the beginning, I know that we've touched a lot of different subjects as we've done, the last like 6 or so podcasts, or whatever you want to call them, shows. But of course, in the beginning, whenever we first decided to do this, I knew that I had something to say to people that were grieving. And that's one of my, even though we've done different subjects, that is where my heart's at for this. So I have to kind of keep coming back to that place of, I want to talk to you if you're grieving so deeply over the loss of something in your life that you feel like you're stuck in the middle and you can't go up or down. I just want to say to you that God really is there for you and he wants you to get through it. There's one thing I think that is a key element in getting to that other side, and it's this. We really need to take it step by step, just like this guy came alongside me and he said 10 steps at a time. I wasn't focused on the up or the down. I was focused on right where I was at. And I think that's a big difference. What happens in your mind, you start to get anxiety and you start to get so afraid whenever you look so high up and it looks so far away from you. Or when you look all the way down and you just keep looking backwards and you can't get your heart off of what was behind you. I know I just keep going back to it's an analogy and the mountain and all that stuff. But honestly, truly in life, I wanted to stay there. When I lost my son, and again, this is kind of after the first year, like you don't have a choice in how you grieve. When it first happens, it just happens to you. But eventually, after a while, like say maybe a year or so, and I'm sure it's different for every person. For me, it was about the year mark. I started to choose how I would grieve instead of it just hitting me from nowhere like a wave, just slapping you when you're not ready for it. I actually started to choose, this is Ryan's birthday. I'm going to go to his gravesite. I'm going to bring him flowers, or I'm going to just sit down and look at videos of him all day. I'm going to look at his pictures and I'm going to cry. And I would literally schedule it on my schedule. I would mark off days to grieve for him. And people would be texting me, hey, Corey, can I get my hair done? And I would say, no, I'm taking off tomorrow to cry. And I think people will understand that. And I think it's okay to just say, these are the days out of my life. This day was very important to him, or this day was very important to us. I think on Mother's Day, I'm just going to do nothing but just cry all day and remember my son. And it's okay. But at least I was choosing, I was being in control of when I would grieve. And I think that when that grief is a choice, I think that's a more healing place, because all of the other days that you're not grieving, what you have to do is you have to let the past be the past and live in the moment and not look too far ahead and not look too far behind you. It's hard, because one of the things that you want to do the most, and of course I did at first, is I wanted to just constantly think about my son every day. I wanted to live in the past and almost be there. I wanted to talk about him every minute. After a while, I noticed that people really don't want to talk about him all the time. People want to talk about what's going on today. And over time, I started to realize that it wasn't healthy for me to be there. Today, I focus on a lot of different things that are going on in my life today. I focus on my other son, Tristan. I focus on my foster daughter. I focus on my work, on doing this podcast for you guys, for my relationship with God, my relationship with all of my friends, my family, my parents, and the things that are important to me today. And I just had to come to the understanding that today, Ryan's not in my life today. He's in the past and he lives there. And it's okay to visit when I choose to, but it's not okay to stay there. And most of my days, although certain things will come up and remind me of him, of course, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about him. I have his pictures all around me, and I do love to remember him. Ryan loved to dance, and that was one of the things that he was really good at. I have clips of him where he was dancing at the country bars, and he was so good with all the girls, and he was such a polite, handsome gentleman. I just love to look back and look at how much he really put himself into dancing. He really made it something that he wanted to be good at, and he was just so smooth, and everybody loved him. It was one of the things that people loved about him. And I went with him one time to a dance that I think it was an engagement party, and I'm not a dancer, but he pulled me out there anyway, and he said, come on, Mom, you can do it. And I kept assuring him that there's no way that I could dance because I have two left feet. And we got out there and I was just doing it. And I've never been able to really dance with anybody since then. For whatever reason, I don't know how he did it, but he just showed me where to step, and it was really easy. And I love thinking about memories like that. I love thinking about him dancing. I love going back and looking at the videos and just seeing the way that he was. He loved martial arts too, and he would just go to the tournaments and have a lot of fun. He would win a lot of times and come and just brag and show me his awards and things like that. There was so many things about Ryan. I love thinking about him when he was a baby, and that time when he was in his about 10 years old. He was such a cool big brother. That was about the time Tristan was born, and he loved being a big brother. What I realize is that even the people that stay here with us are not the same today as they were years ago. I mean, especially your kids, right? Your kids are not the same. We can't think about them being babies forever. We have to move on and realize that there's a place of acceptance where my son today is not here. My other son is not a baby anymore, but he's a grown man, and our relationship is different. And it's okay to visit the past sometimes, but it's unhealthy to stay there. The other thing that gives us anxiety is to just keep looking up at the top, wondering how you're going to make it. And I think the best thing that we can do is to take things one step at a time. And when we're out in this place, and I think that's why God does it this way, he leads you through the ankle deep water. He leads you through the knee deep water. He leads you through the waist deep water. And then eventually you're out there in this place where you're just swimming around and you're just completely helpless and there's nothing you can do. And I've finally come to an understanding that all this time that I've been walking through the water and it's gotten deeper and deeper in my life, God was just taking me to this point where I would be ready. Nobody lets their baby just, run off into the street when they're a kid. The parents will always groom them and keep them. That's what God does to us. He only puts you in places whenever he knows that you're ready. In fact, there's a scripture where it says that Jesus talked to the disciples. He sat them down and told them stories. And it literally says it just like this. It says he taught them as they were able to hear it. Grown men, they weren't able to hear some things until they were ready and he knew. So one of the things that I just love about our relationship with God is that he's patient. He's so patient with us. And sometimes we may not be ready to go into that deep water, but that's okay, because what we need to do is start where we're at and live in the moment, live in today, where this place of acceptance. I'm the most upset in my life when I'm dying and begging God to change things, or even worse, to change people. Most of the time, that's not the way it works. And sometimes, people do need to change. A lot of times they do. And that is the case. Maybe somebody's being very ugly to you in your life. Maybe you go to work every day and there's one employee that really gives you a hard time. I had a client that told me the other day about a parent. She's a teacher, and a parent in her class is just really tormenting her right now. And it's completely undeserved. She has to live with it until the end of the school year, and there's nothing she can do. She can't get the girl out of her class. It's something she has to live with. And I think that even in these small moments of being uncomfortable, being in places that we can't change these other people, we can't do anything about it ourselves, instead of trying to run away and get out of the situation, I think we have to ask ourselves, Lord, what can I do to get through it? What do you want me to do to learn how to get through this, to learn how to just depend on you, let you be my life jacket, let you be the one who draws me through deep, deep waters. Because on the other side, listen to this. This is what happened when they got to the other side. It says in Ezekiel 47, this is where the water flows towards the east. When it empties out into the sea, there's swarms of living creatures there. They live wherever the water flows. Because this water flows there, it makes the salt water fresh. And fishermen will stand along the shore, and they will be spreading their nets, and they'll catch fish of many kinds. There's fruit trees of all kinds that grow on the banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail, because every month they will bear fruit, because the water from the sanctuary flows to them, and their fruit serves for food, and their leaves for healing. There's healing on the other side. And I don't know how long that is for you. And I don't even know how long that is for me. I don't know how long this is going to take. But I do know this. I do know that I want to be a person of endurance. I want to be somebody who learns how to stick it out. I want to be somebody who learns how to make it to the other side. And if I get in a place where I can't do it, I know that God is with me. I know that the water will not overflow me. I know that he's going to be there to pull me through, and I can completely depend on him when my feet don't touch the ground, when the water is against you. And when we get there, the catch is so great. I love that part. Jesus said that we're going to be fishers of men. I feel like God's just saying your ministry, your purpose in life is just flourishing when you get to the other side of these places that are tough. Whatever it is that you feel like is your mountain or your river or your place where you got stuck, it's hard, and you can't compare it to other people. You can't say that, well, mine is worse, or look, I don't even have anything as bad as that person over there. It's difficult because you can never compare that with other people. One thing I think that we have to remember is that whatever it is that you go through, it's just where you're at in life. And I just want to encourage people to trust in God no matter what it is. If it's big or if it's small, it'll build your faith. Did you know that when they crossed over the first time, if you go all the way back to the book of Exodus, when they crossed over the first time with Moses and the Red Sea and all that stuff, Once they got over there and they were in the wilderness, God wanted them to cross over to the promised land. What he said, actually, and this is in scripture, it's amazing to me. I just sit there like, wow, these people are people, but they're just like us. He said, I can't take them through the short way, even though it's shorter, because there's other people in the land over there that will fight against them. And if they see war, they're going to want to turn around and go back to Egypt. That's crazy because they were in slavery in Egypt. Same exact thing happens books later where Joshua was there thinking, man, this is so hard. We should have just been content to stay on that side. Don't be content. Don't be content to stay where you are or complacent or depressed, because that's what happens to us when we live in the past and we keep looking backwards, just hoping that if we could just live back there, then we'll be comforted and everything will be okay. You're never going to be able to live back there. And what we really need to do is we need to learn to move forward. Hopefully in your life, you can be able to come to a place of acceptance like I have, where you understand that even though it's hard, maybe this person is no longer in my life, or maybe I have to keep someone in my life. Whatever your situation is, I encourage you. I encourage you to get to the other side, because the promised land is there. Ask yourself what your promised land is. See what it is. I mean, maybe sometimes we just don't have a good sight of it. Maybe, and I had to do this too. Ask God, what's next for me? What do you have for me that I can look forward to? Because that's really important, to see what's on the other side and be ready and be willing to run towards it.
Thank you so much, Corey. As always, what a wonderful message. Want to remind everybody that you've got to go to Facebook, like us, follow us, go to YouTube. Also go to our website, joywillcomeinthemorning.com. And that's where you can give us a little insight into what you're thinking, what's going on in your life. And as we end here, maybe we can get with Corey and she can help us pray for everyone who's going through a tough time right now. We need it.
Father, with a humble heart, I lift up everybody who's listening right now. I thank you, Lord, for each person. And I just ask that, because you know each one of them and you know their situation, you know exactly where their heart is at. I ask you for healing. I ask you for hope, Lord. And I just ask that you would be there with us as we go through the waters that are so deep in this life. There's times that we just can't make it through, and we know we can't make it without you, Lord. Please be with them and take them to the other side and give them courage and faith.
Keeping watch, keeping faith, seeing signs and counting days. Joy comes in